here we are at Investec. There's a group of fantastic women here. Events such as these are important because, first of all, they create a safe space for women in business to discuss issues that only pertain to them without actually having to consider the presence of men in the room. So just the creation of a space where women can speak their minds freely, I think, is important.
I think the hot topic on the women agenda is basically women in leadership and in control when it comes to entrepreneurship. Women should be driving the economy, and historically when you look at a family setup, every woman shapes what the family looks like. So I believe it can be transported to the enterprises and the economy in general. Some of the things I would like to share with the young women is basically the first thing is you need to get focused. And as you are getting focused on your purpose, as you find your purpose, you also need to learn from your mistakes, because nothing is going to be smooth sailing.
First of all, remember that you always have something to learn. There are always things that you don't know, and you have to remain open to listening and learning no matter who you become.
Also, in most cases, get a mentor that would actually help you in getting you around the process.
So keep yourself humble, and I think that ultimately is the best foundation for success.
Hello, everybody. Firstly, welcome to the first Rising Star Female Forum webinar. Let me apologize for our late start. We are having a few connection issues with one of the speakers, which we're working hard to resolve. But in the meantime, welcome. Welcome. I hope you enjoyed the video of when we were able to host these forums in person. But this is our first webinar, which was hosted together with BP and with Tiger Brands. I can see there's over 450 people here, so thank you very much. Thank you for attending. Thank you for continuing to support what we do, and continuing to support the Female Forum. As many of you know, Rising Star is our program that recognizes the most talented young professionals across South Africa and gives them a platform to connect and to rise. It's also fabulous to see so many grad stars in the room. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. I think the video you just saw explained why we do what we do and why over the past 2 years, the female forums have proven to be so successful. But we do have an additional prize for you this time. Our guest speaker, Advocate Thandi Orleyn, the chair of BP Southern Africa and the director of many other boards, has offered 1 hour of her time to give some mentorship and advice to one of you here in the room today. So please, during question time, once the interview is being conducted, bring your A game, make sure you're the one to be noticed. We will go through each and every single question after the event and inform the winner within 24 hours. Now on to the reason why we're doing this today. I think leadership at all times is challenging, especially within a traditionally male-dominated industry. But leadership now, in the time of COVID, is when true lessons are learned and when true icons are born. No one's trodden this path before. There's no blueprint to follow. There are no answers. We have to lead in the true sense of leading. So today, I would like to welcome Sneh Makagula, the CHRO of Tiger Brands, our sponsor alongside BP for this event, and a long-time Rising Star friend. Thank you, Sneh. To begin the conversation with Advocate Thandi Orleyn about leadership in the time of COVID and how this pandemic has forced the hand of many leaders, what lessons can be learned from it, and how we can learn from this going forwards. Once Sneh has conducted the interview, then we will conduct question time. I will come back to manage all your questions from the floor. Advocate Orleyn has kindly allocated the full 90 minutes so that she can handle as many questions as possible. We know from previous female forums that you guys have a lot to say, especially with the super prize. So we look forward to that. And of course, please keep the social media going. Tag us, post us, any nuggets of advice that you come across. Please just Rising Star SA. The hashtags are in the bottom corner. Keep the social media going. So at this moment, I would like to welcome Sneh to bring onto the stage to put on your microphone and your video, and also Advocate Orleyn.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to join you this afternoon to have a bit of a conversation with Advocate Thandi Orleyn, who I've always admired from a distance. It's a conversation about leadership, so I'm sure you'll have quite a number of questions that you want to pose to her about some of the challenges that you are facing in this very unprecedented time that we are going through with COVID-19 and multiple lockdown situations. Dr. Advocate Orleyn, are you on the line?
It looks like she's still struggling to get in. Perhaps for a moment now, you could share with the people in the audience some of the lessons that you've learned leading Tiger Brands from an HR perspective, and some of the new paths that you've had to follow.
Yeah, I think it's been a really challenging time for everyone across the country and globally. And we've seen it play out in multiple ways in our own organization. You will know, Laura, that we are part of Essential Services as a food company. So a lot of our people have had to continue working even during lockdown. So our accountability has been to keep them safe and healthy and make sure that we try our best to prevent any infections as people come to work to produce the food that's needed for sustenance by the country. So that's been quite a challenge. We've had to go beyond the normal work that we would do as an HR team in terms of ensuring that we facilitate getting private transport for our people together with our operations to ensure the social distancing is observed, ensuring that we adjust our policies, whether it's leave or well-being, etc., to ensure that that we align with the regulations from government that had to come out almost on a weekly basis at the start of lockdown. So from developing practices and policies over several months, we went down to developing policies and practices within a week. I remember we had to design an incentive scheme within a week for our factory people, just to ensure that we gave them an additional stimulus for further performance during lockdown. And there's been a far bigger focus on well-being in our organization. I think Dr. Thandi Orleyn has joined, but it has really forced us to focus on employee well-being, not only from a physical perspective, but also from an emotional perspective, as people work from home.
I see Sneh Magagula.
Yes, hello, Advocate Thandi.
Hi, Sneh.
I'm on the line already.
Top left-hand corner somewhere, there should be like a little blue dot that looks almost like a target, like a camera.
There's on the top left.
One looks like a microphone, the other one looks like a target, like a little dot.
turn audio off.
Turn audio on, turn video on.
The speaker next to the audio.
This dot, turn video on. Okay.
Aha.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Just tilt your camera a little bit.
Pardon?
Just tilt your screen, Thandi, so we can see your face.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to be moving things. I had all my gadgets here.
Oh, there we go. Now we can
Okay.
see you.
Okay, I had all my gadgets and I was trying everything.
Welcome.
Okay.
Lovely to finally meet you. I was saying earlier before you joined that I've always admired you from a distance, having spent the early parts of my career at Shell and having spent actually about 3.5 years at the Shell and BP refinery in Durban. So it was lovely to follow your career in your time at BP. So welcome to this conversation.
Thank you. I'm just trying to sort out my screen. I'm really sorry that we've had to do this like this.
No, that's fine.
Okay, that's better.
Okay, so
good.
thank you so much, Advocate Thandi. We're so glad you're here. I'm going to opt out. I'm just going to opt out now, and I'm going to leave Sneh to conduct the interview with you about leadership and the challenges you've had to face during the time of COVID. Are you ready?
Just a second. Let me just make
No
sure
worries.
that the screen is looking much better.
Beautiful.
How am I looking?
Fabulous.
You're looking fantastic.
You can see me.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
You see me?
I see you guys very well.
Okay,
Beautiful.
great.
Okay, I'm going to opt out. Ladies, please have a fabulous conversation, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Good.
Thanks.
Welcome again. Good to finally see you perfectly on your screen. And let's start the conversation without much further ado. Conversation is really about leadership. But before we start, maybe if I can just check, how would you like to address you, Thandi or Advocate Orleyn?
Oh, Thandi is it's much better. It's much more personal, I think.
Okay, good. So Thandi, it's a conversation about leadership, and to kick us off, I think just start off by telling us what you believe the key attributes that leaders should have during this time of COVID-19, but not COVID-19. There's almost a revolution now on the go with Black Lives Matter and the whole debate around racism and discrimination. So what are the key attributes that you believe that leaders should have or display during this time?
Thank you so much. And firstly, I must thank you for inviting me to this session. I do apologize for some of these glitches. I think we who are much more mature are always challenged by these issues. However, I'm excited that I overcame them and I was able to come and join everybody this afternoon. I think the most important, there are a couple of what I believe are non-negotiable attributes that a leader should have. And the first one is decisiveness. When you've got to work under a crisis environment, when you've got to work under situations of pressure, you need to think through, but when you've made a decision, you must be decisive in implementing that decision. Secondly, you must have agility. Sometimes people make a decision and then they prevaricate until it's too late and they lose the momentum. So I think it's important to be agile in a time of crisis. You also have to have a couple of skills that accompany this, and that you must be able to listen. You must be empathetic. As you say, we have seen during this time of crisis, and that not only has impacted on such issues, but have surfaced some of the issues relating to race, gender. We know we've been burying Miss Pule today in South Africa. We've had the issue of Mr. Floyd in America, and I believe it's the lack of listening from leaders and the lack of empathy. So those for me are quite critical for all seasons, but particularly at this time of crisis.
Oh, absolutely. And in your mind, what are some of the leadership strategies that should be implemented now, future-proof not only organizations but our societies going forward?
Okay. We have been having to work through these issues in the various companies, and I could use BP, where, as you know, I'm the chair, and some of you will be aware that besides the issue of the pandemic, we're also going through our own changes where we are reinventing BP as a group. I believe that you've got to be resolute and you must have resilience. You must look at the strategies on how to support through this crisis. So it's important that one looks at what has gone, how one can manage. And if you look at issues from a business perspective, you've got to think about how do you manage so that you can be sustainable post this era. And then you must be able to ensure that you have plans to lead into the reconstruction phase. And there will be difficult decisions to be made. And you've got to say to yourself, acknowledge that it's difficult, but say that we cannot stop because it is difficult. We have to do those things. And also you have to start thinking forward, how to reimagine the new world, how you are going to reform and make sure that you can deal with the new changes. I believe that if you look at the silver lining of this, it is putting us forward to the fourth industrial revolution. And therefore,
Absolutely.
if you had strategies that were still wishy-washy, you need to now formulate those strategies in a way that is going actually talking to Africans, people in Africa. Hopefully, most of you are going to leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution.
Absolutely. All of that implies massive, wide-ranging change. And while a lot of people do recognize the changes that need to be made, a lot of people don't know how to navigate change during these times. I'm just interested to hear your views on how leaders can really step up and change the way they themselves manage change within their organizations as they lead them through these massive, wide-ranging changes, not only from a societal perspective, but also from a digital perspective.
I keep on looking back and thinking of the changes that happened in South Africa towards a democratic and constitutional framework. And we thought that those changes were huge. And I don't play them down. They were huge changes. And there was lots of fear. And Madiba, our first president in the democratic South Africa, always said that people are held back by their fears. And at this moment, you can see fear amongst people. You can see fear that leads to denialism. It is therefore important as we manage change to think, maybe some people may say it's very harsh, but to say change is as certain and as inevitable as death. And therefore, the management of change must be central to any of the strategies that you are going to be embarking on. So you may say, I'm not at the top of the leadership in the company, but your role, firstly, is to embrace change. And therefore, when you have embraced, you will realize that you are starting to deal with your own fears, and you will be able to contribute, because we need everybody. We need everybody to be part of this change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Of course, as we manage change, there's the emotional element, and COVID-19, besides being a pandemic and having overwhelmed everybody, including presidents of countries, is also a huge source of anxiety. In fact, anything that involves a change in the way we do things, in the change in change in life as we know it, involves a lot of anxiety. And you must have experienced some of that in your own team. How have you supported your team and the organization emotionally through this really, really trying time of change?
People look at things from their personal perspective, and that is important. That is, you have to start from within and go to outside. But when you get outside, you look both at the macro and the micro levels. And I'll give you an anecdote. It's not really an anecdote, but it's a reality. And that as we've been managing this crisis, as we've been managing the Reinvent BP, and then our CEO finds that she's got an opportunity that she can't refuse. So now
Yes.
we've had to manage a CEO who is leaving and
Yeah.
bringing in a new CEO. So
Yeah.
it's been at our coal face. It's not something
Yes.
that we are reading in the book. It's something that you are working with. It's like saying to people, as you know, the saying that you've got to build the plane as you fly it. And that has been
Absolutely.
what we're doing. And I'm hoping that I'm able to give to the team is to help them review the plans, motivate them, encourage them, give support, and make them think continuously between what is and what can be. Because as we go through the change, you will wake up tomorrow, the sun will be there, maybe a cold day like in Cape Town, or a sunny day like in Joburg. But at the end
Yes.
of the day, we find ways in which we can work together and readjust the plans as if we were flying the plane as we tinker with it.
Mm. Do you find that you've had to give far more emotional support than you would have, under kind of normal, inverted commas, circumstances?
We've had to. When you've
Mm.
had to, because imagine people working alone at home and you've got children, people don't understand that this is not an 8 to 5 job like you are in the
Yeah,
office. The
yeah,
children are with you. Maybe your ailing parents are with you. If you have a single mother or father, or you are a pair, a couple, how do you manage those issues? So there's a lot of emotional drain. And
yes,
also, as we know, in the South African context, we do have help in the house. We have housekeeping. But if, for instance, your housekeeper was not a stay-in, you don't have
yes,
one. Under level 5
yes,
and level 4, you didn't. So you are a
absolutely.
housekeeper, you are a mother, you are a teacher, you are a father, and you are a worker. So emotionally, it's so important to stay close. You just pick up the phone, you do a virtual call, you make sure that in the company, your EA employee assistance program has got a mental wellness part to it. It's so critical.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, we've also found the same, that people just require so much more emotional support besides the professional support during these times. And, you know, we've all been challenged, Thandi, in terms of giving back, particularly to those who are more vulnerable than we are to getting infected, but also who are more vulnerable to being impacted from an employment perspective. Can you share with us how you've back and how you've paid it forward as a leader in this really trying time, particularly for more vulnerable communities?
Talking to young leaders, for me, what has been important is being disciplined. It's not an easy thing again. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about easy roads here. You have to be very disciplined.
Yeah.
One of the things under these circumstances you've got to do, as you know, those who've maintained and retained their jobs are very fortunate. There has been
Absolutely.
quite a number of retrenchments. There have been a number of ways companies have reduced what your income or your benefits are. And what I found is very important is to give a lot of support to people
Mm.
in the workplace to kind of try and talk even about financial wellness. You know,
Yes.
what would you do if you were retrenched today? What would you do
Mm.
if you were retrenched in 6 months' time? Are you able to ensure that you reduce your debts if you are fortunate to still be in employment at this stage? How would
Mm.
you, if you were to be retrenched, use your retrenchment package? And what would happen if you stay in your position? So, giving that coaching and mentoring has been very important for me. The
Mm.
second issue is to try and get people to lead a balanced life. So, for instance, in the community where I am, we've tried to put our resources together and support the neighboring community that is less endowed than we are.
Yes.
Fortunately, I still worship in the township in Katlehong. So through the church in Katlehong, we've reached out to the communities of the people in our church who can't afford. So you try to work on the short term, you also work on the longer term. And we've been working with Forte University, working with other universities around these issues with the students, the issues around students who had to graduate and how we support them, how we help in terms of making sure that in schools, because I'm also involved in schools, on how we can ensure that the programs that we're supporting hopefully can be reintroduced or sustained beyond this year, which is still out in the air.
Great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And for you personally, Thandi, what has been the hardest moment in this crisis, in this time that we're in? And maybe if you can also share with us what has been your proudest moment.
I think earlier on I mentioned the our CEO Priscilla Mabelane taking another opportunity and having to make, as I said, a quick decision. And because we're a multinational, having to make sure that there's an understanding at group level, there's an understanding locally, and to try and make sure that we don't destabilize the environment. That has been the most recent within the environment. The other issues, I would say that it's issues we grapple with in the board. But in terms of those issues, is making those tough decisions about saying there's issues of liquidity presently and managing the cash flow and issues of people. Those things, and you've got to look at life and livelihood. I think a lot of
Absolutely.
people are engaging with those. But on a practical level, from where I've sat, it's having to make a decision, although it's collective, clearly have to own the decision to say, in this environment, we have to retrench. But at the same time, what has been, I think, important to say as well, is to get the leadership from CEO to all the levels of senior leadership to say we will take pay cuts, and I found
Absolutely.
of people
Yeah.
saying we will take cuts, and those at the bottom who are, if we don't retrench, we won't cut those salaries at the bottom
Mm.
end. So that
Mm.
for me has been a painful journey through this particular crisis in terms of that. And what has been exciting, I'll use the BP example in terms of what has been quite an exciting thing for me, is the fact that the last 10 years we've worked on our transformation agenda and journey. And so we've been able to find talent inside the country, another
Amazing.
woman, and who's taken over
Wonderful.
Diallo. So that for me has really been an exciting exciting thing. And also as we move people, we are able to say people the succession planning programs, because people talk about succession plan in the air, but now
Yes.
we're applying it as we go.
You're
So
actually executing against those plans now, aren't you?
exactly. So
Amazing.
that for me has been quite an exciting opportunity. The other exciting thing in the community has been to see how the community has rallied around those who are less advantaged than them, and being able to ensure that we can manage this in a tighter way. It's not perfect, and as the Chinese say, only God is perfect, but you have
Mm.
to try and do what you can in this environment.
Mm. And how have you found your past experience has served you in this challenging time? So how have some of the lessons you've learned throughout your leadership journey served you in this time?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at my bio or my profile, my trajectory has not been a straight line. I've kind of zigzagged. People may think sometimes there seem to not have been a plan, but what I've found looking back is that the things I've done have enabled me to be where I am.
Yes.
From being a human rights lawyer and moving into the dispute resolution environment, working in the not-for-profit, moving into government, and then moving into the for-profit environment. All that, when you put it together, you can see now that it helped me to sustain me. I've developed calmness. I've been able to look objectively at different ways. I can understand the different points, and I'm able to weigh up quite quickly. And I must just add, it doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. It just means that if you act quickly and decisively, you can also quickly correct your mistakes. And that is very
Absolutely.
helpful as you understand, as you go through this journey.
Mm.
And lastly, on this point, is that I've been able to look deeper into my own faith. You know, sometimes we go to church without thinking about what faith means to you, and that
Yes.
has enabled me to grow during this period.
Wonderful. I think we've all really been challenged to connect with our own purpose and our own beliefs and values in this time, because it's been so challenging in so many different ways. I think we're getting to the last bits of our interview. And I just wanted to find out from yourself, because your story is quite inspirational. But what inspires you? What inspires Advocate Thandi Orleyn?
There's quite a lot of people. I can start with people and and things. And one thing, people, my parents. My
Yes.
parents inspired me. It's sometimes a cliche to say my mom or my dad, but I found that both my parents were complementary. And therefore, in that approach, I was able to draw strength from that. One was a strategist, my father, and my mother was the implementer. So, and they were very forward-looking as people who were born before the war. When I talk about the war, the Second World War, to be
Yes.
able to be very democratic in the house and be able to engage quite openly. So that inspired me in the way I looked at things. I think subconsciously that's what led me into being a lawyer and
Yes.
in getting into the human rights law environment. And clearly, the first president of the Constitutional Court, Arthur Chaskalson, inspired me a lot. I worked with him in the 80s when we were at the Legal Resources Center. And so that was an inspiring time, being like crusaders against apartheid. And when I look back, I feel that we played an important role in the development of democracy and constitutionalism in the country. And what inspires me? What inspires me is seeing people grow, seeing people develop, and seeing the transformation. Some young people may think there's no transformation in the country, but we who've come from a situation where in the post office you had different entrances, where you couldn't go to a hotel even if you could afford it. So the transformation has been real. And therefore, looking at that journey, and there's lots of challenges, but it excites me that if you've done this, you can do something more. So
Yes.
I get inspired by thinking about what big changes can we bring about. That for me is what makes me exciting about life.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been quite a journey, and you've had lots of people that you could look up to, and just your belief in the human spirit is also inspiring in itself. So, as we draw our conversation to a close, what words of advice would you give to the people that have joined the webinar this afternoon? As we close this part of the conversation and get on to the question. From a leadership perspective, what advice would you give to our audience?
Anything that comes easy can easily go. That is very important. If you acquire it easily, then make sure that you retain it, because it can so easily be taken away. I'm talking about from material things. If you give your kids toys just willy-nilly, they will be too much, they won't appreciate them. But at the same time, if you are a person who is who pass easily or who gets things easily, you don't have empathy with people who struggle to get things. And so you've got to think about those things. If things just happen to you, you kind of will say, well, it's post-apartheid. I've worked hard for this. Because you have the motivation and you wonder why so-and-so hasn't been able to succeed like you do. Whether it's material, whether it's emotional, whether it's... So people must learn to understand that we are not all the same. And the second thing that is very important is that you have to walk your talk as a leader. You know, in my mother tongue, there's a saying that the crab will always tell his kids to walk straight, but the crab doesn't walk straight. So don't be a crab and walk sideways and expect your children to walk straight. And so just to emphasize on the issue that it is so easy to unwind the good that has been achieved. So you must always build on it. In a South African context, the last 10 years of our democracy did a lot of damage to the first 15 years of our democracy. And that happened in front of our eyes. And before you know it, you are in a state of economic downturn. When in 2008, you were in a stage of about 5% economic growth per annum. And now we're looking at -7 growth in this economy. So
It's
that
scary. Yeah.
scary. It's really scary. So that has to be a lesson to future leaders. And also you must always pay it forward. I always say the last point I want to make around this issue. A lot of people chase money. Money is a commodity. It can easily come and can easily go. And therefore it's important to do things that will, and money or material things will be the consequence rather than the objective. So hopefully people can lead with integrity, can lead with values that are based on empathy, listening, and integrity. And my view is that it will be important as a young democracy to stand for what we believe in. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you for this conversation. I must say I've learned a lot and have been very inspired in the last hour, and I'm sure our audience also has been, and they probably have a number of questions for you. Just to summarize, some of the things that I've taken out are around truly leading by example. I love the example of the crab. Truly and valuing diversity, because we are not all the same, and leaders have to be extremely aware of how diverse the people that they lead are. The courage that is required to lead change, particularly in a time of crisis that we find ourselves in, and the courage required to actually shift mindsets, which is critical for leading in the new normal. And of course, paying it forward, so important. We can't only focus myopically on our own organizations or our own communities. We have to spread it around and pay it forward with those that are less fortunate than us. And I think the last one is really the importance of leading with integrity and being courageous in holding up the values that are needed in our society. So thank you very much. It's been a lovely, lovely conversation.
Thanks, Anne.
And I want to thank you, Sneh. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience at the beginning, and thank you for conducting a beautiful interview.
Only a pleasure.
Sorry?
Only a pleasure.
Sneh, you're always on our side. Thank you. Thandi, these questions are going crazy throughout the entire conversation. The audience love you. The audience are thanking you for your inspiration, for your humility, for your honesty. It's not stopping. But there's a lot of questions about, as a female leader, what struggles you've had to overcome as a female leader. And did you imagine yourself, this is from a young lady called Lorato, when you began your career, did you ever imagine that you would be leading this male-dominated organization and chairing the boards? What did you think you'd be doing?
Firstly, I didn't speak from what I've been talking about from a female or woman's perspective. But I believe that it's been maybe because I'm so much in a male-dominated environment. It requires courage. It requires a lot of resilience. I started off as you can imagine, in the 70s in law school at Fort Hare University. I mean, now you talk about student bodies at universities of in excess of 20, 30, 50, 100,000 people. And we were about 1,000 people. And in the law faculty in our class. There most probably were about not more than 5 of us, in a class of 20, 30 students later on in the final years of our studies. And so you had to fight for your corner. And I think that's what helped me from an early age. And also, just to tell you, I'm the only girl amongst boys at my home. So again, I had to fight for my corner. And so I've grown up knowing that you have to be, and also I'm quite short. So you've got to find ways to be noticed. You've got to find ways to ensure that your voice is heard. And for me, if I can impart anything to young people, and particularly young Black people, because we've grown up in environments that are traditional, maybe even in the Afrikaner community, that are traditional, that you've got to show respect, that you've got to defer to your elders. It doesn't take you that far. I mean, you've got to respect, but you've got to push in a respectful way. So as a female, that has helped me. Did I ever think that I would be where I was? I was very ambitious. I knew that I wanted to be somebody. And I didn't know that I would be where I am at the moment. At some point during the early years, I thought I may be a judge of the Supreme Court. But then I decided through my career that I wanted to do other things. So I think it's important to plan your life and also to have some ambition and to have some motivation.
Awesome. So I think you've answered quite a few questions within that answer. You've covered this a bit, but Dekola, the Bombi, would like to say, as a woman, how have you managed to keep going? What have you pulled on with all the stereotypes and gender stereotypes, particularly in a male-dominated industry around you? What's the thing, the one thing that kept you going?
Firstly, my mother was a good role model. And not just my mother. I grew up in a township called New Brighton. New Brighton in Port Elizabeth. And it's got lots of role models. In the arts, John Carney, in the law, in the Sisnomhle Nkonyeni, who's just died, in the arts, and a lot of other sports. As you know, our present captain of the South African rugby is from Port Elizabeth.
Absolutely.
So we had strong anchors, rugby, all kinds of sport, and the arts, and in education. We had strong values. So that anchored me in terms of finding the inspiration, of seeing people who succeed. And my mother reached the pinnacle of her career in the nursing profession. So again, that motivated me. And moving into law, it was unlike my mom in nursing, which is mainly women. Moving into law was tough. But again, you always look at the time. I think it was already the time of change. The issue of, although it was not called inclusivity and diversity at the time, but it was being acknowledged that you needed to have more Black people, you needed to have more women. Most of you won't know anything about the Sullivan Code, which emanated from the US about driving a change in South Africa against apartheid. And so those things gave us the opportunity to venture into areas that were excluded from Black people and women in particular. And in recent times, I must say I've had a very strong support system. I've got a very dynamic, strong husband, but he is strong enough not to be insecure about a strong woman around him. And I find that is very important in my own career.
You're very lucky to have that, certainly. I wish I'd found that myself. I've just seen a beautiful comment come up. These comments and questions are coming up so quickly that I don't even get a chance to read them before there's more. But somebody just said, thank you for reigniting the leader in me. What a beautiful thing to say.
Beautiful.
Your spirit is beautiful. Your empathy, kindness, and quiet strength shines through. As these the inspiration you are giving to these young people at the moment is incredible. Another question that came out, which I saw, is how do you stop yourself being seen as a female leader? How do you take that female away, and how do you define yourself as a leader rather than a female leader?
I am a woman. I am a
female leader.
So for me, I'm a leader, but I'm a woman. And I've never felt in areas of where I lead that people have undermined me because I'm a woman. But I must say, when I was younger, I did fail on a number of things, because people may look at me now and say, you must have had it easy. In one position or job, I won't mention, I was rejected 3 times, but I wanted it so much that I kept on going back. So that for me is important, that you must have resilience. But I think you earn trust, you earn respect, and people start recognizing you as a person rather than to pigeonhole you into a certain area. And you don't lose your femininity because of that. And you shouldn't. You shouldn't be a man in a skirt.
I completely agree. I once had to tackle a question in the Rising Star Awards about giving ladies makeup, and as I presented the point of view that being beautiful and powerful are not mutually exclusive. We can be both.
Exactly. I think that's important. And also, men must groom. You are not macho because you are not groomed. And and same with women. You have to be professional, presentable, and it's up to you how far you go. But my view is that you have to make an effort. And I think life likes people who make an effort.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn to a couple of COVID questions now. There's a few people, I'm going to point out Shrestha Singh here, who just wants to know from your point of view, can young people draw on to get through this difficult time in COVID? What skills and resources should they either acquire or find or bring from their past? And how would you advise employees to manage the stress exuded by this new working style?
Okay. The first thing, ensure you have the right systems, support systems around you. I mean, we come from different cultures. Some people would have family. I mean, at the moment we are in lockdown. I'm working from home. I live with my adult children at the moment, and my grandchild, and so we are a full family. And something we didn't do when we were working full time, but now we do sit down for dinner, all of us, and it's wonderful. And so it enables us to emotionally to connect. So that I've found to be very helpful at this time. So if you don't have family, like you've come from East London and you're alone in Joburg, try connect with friends. Last Saturday we had a virtual afternoon high tea with my friends, and so we do those things because I think it's important to do that connection. And then going back to the work environment, clearly at the moment, if you are in the health services, you've got to go out. It's more dangerous, but it's important that you look after yourself and look after your family. But I find that I think people in the health services are under a lot of stress, and I really, really appreciate them. I really recommend and commend them. But if you are a person who can work from home, think about your health, your wellness, your mental wellness. think about fatigue, I've found that we work much longer hours than we did under normal circumstances. So it's important that we look out for those kind of things. Do some sport, please. I ask you, play, walk, whatever you can do. I walk, and as soon as they open up, I'll be on the golf course, and so to try and have a balanced lifestyle, it's so important for you.
On that note, another question popped up saying, how would you recommend people can maintain discipline whilst working from home?
That was the other point I was going to raise with earlier on with Sneh, is that one of the changes that have come about from me as a leader is to reflect on all these policies we have to monitor people. I think we should throw those policies out. We should rather work on trust. We should work on
We're going to quote you, Thandi.
we should work on trust. We should work on motivation. We should get people to kind of get these group sessions where you can find out how people do it. And I mean, we could spend a lot of time here, but I really work on my discipline. From my diet to my exercise to kind of making time to read something outside of work, even a cheap romantic novel, just to get out of that state of being tense all the time. So for me, it's quite important to start from within and then reach out to friends and family. And also what I find is that just giving to people less than you, it just makes me feel good inside. Selfish, but I think it makes me feel good.
There's nothing wrong with that. I think also in this situation, we have to take a lot more personal accountability for our actions in the working from home scenario. We now actually just have to grow up and accept that it's our responsibility to keep on doing what we're doing. Another beautiful question. What advice would you give your adolescent self?
Don't worry too much about pimples. When you get older, it's just an oily skin. But also, don't be too impatient. Things do come together at some point if you stay the course. And love yourself. Be kind to yourself.
I think many of us are still learning how to do that when we're past our adolescent years. Pindakule, another big supporter. Over and above working on trust, we need to start measuring people based on their output. This discipline will take you a long way. Pinda, I know, is the HRD over at PPC. So thank you for that. I have many other questions. But I think we've taken lots of your energy, Advocate Orleyn. Thank you so much. I mean, I wish you could just see these comments. There's hearts, there's red hearts, there's love, there's beautifuls, there's you've really made a difference today to the young people that are here. So thank you very much. And in addition to that, the 1 hour mentorship, I don't know how I'm going to go through all of these in 24 hours and come up with the best person. But the 1 hour mentorship is such a generous offer, and it's just another way of changing somebody's life. So thank you so much for everything. And thank you to BP for your support, as well as to you personally.
No, you're welcome. And if I may just say, just talking about BP, because it was a really tough journey in terms of a transformation. And I tell people that if you can't measure it, you don't know how you are doing. And I came in, the journey had started, but when we continued with the journey, we did exactly that. We looked at each and every function, each and every role, each and every division, and we track each one. For a while I had a governance board that was just looking at how we're doing. And at this point in time, we don't have to worry about the racial numbers and composition. We've just got to worry about how we balance other areas of diversity and inclusivity. We've got to worry about how we bring excellence out of people. And so I'm urging other companies that are still struggling to find ways in which they can try and work on it on a time frame. Say if we are at 0, let's work on a 5 to 10 year time frame. Let's say we're adolescents now, and in 10 years' time we'll be adults. And how do we want to see ourselves? And this crisis, I think, it's an opportunity in a way that can enable people to start from 0.
Amazing, amazing. Although people were not really ready to start from 0, not mentally or prepared at all. But thank you so much for your authenticity. Thank you for giving us of yourself today, Thandi. And I think BP are very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Okay. You can just switch off your video and your mic.
Okay, are we done? Thank you so much. Thanks.
It's an honor.
Take care.
So on that note, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the interview. I know we started a little bit late, but I hope we made up for it with Advocate Thandi Orleyn, the chair of BP Southern Africa. As I've mentioned a couple of times, one of you here will win that 1-hour mentorship. I wish it could be me, but I think you might call that cheating. We will contact you privately before the end of the week, and there's going to be a tough decision. You are very active participants. I would like to thank our sponsors and hosts for the event, both BP and Tiger Brands. Thank you for giving your time. Thank you for participating. And thank you for giving your expertise. To all of you, I hope you enjoyed the event. Please watch out for our next events coming up. We have the Accenture Rising Star Awards finalist announcement. The finalists of the 2020 Accenture Rising Star Awards will be announced next week. And we have another leadership conversation, this time with Khomotso Lebele. He's one of the MDs at Accenture, and he is also offering a 1-hour mentorship to somebody who is in the room and stands out. So you can find more details on both of those if you just go to risingstar.co.za. You can register there. Both of the links are there. One more thing, there's a few grad stars, there's a few students in the room. Those of you who haven't entered the Grad Star Awards, the most employable students program, there's about 3 days left. Don't miss your chance. Be a 2020 Grad Star. Go to gradstar.com and enter the awards. What have you got to lose? This is the kind of access, this is the kind of place, this is the kind of platform that we would like to see you on. So once more, thank you to everybody for coming. We reached 500 people at one point, so I appreciate it, and have a fabulous rest of the week and weekend. Thank you very much.